Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... In this episode, not only do I have a special guest returning, but I have a special surprise for my story behind the story segment, which obviously, judging by the thumbnail to this video, it goes without saying that my best friend Connie has returned so we can review this book together. And this came about because our good online friend John invited us to join his buddy read for Head Like a Hole by Andrew Van Wey. Which, going into this, I honestly didn't know what to expect, but when he presented to me the cover where there's this nasty looking head with tentacles coming out of it, I was instantly sold. Then, after I started reading and discovered that this took place in the 90s, it was just nothing but pure love, because that's the decade I grew up. But anywho, without me rambling on about all of the good music, movies, and books and styles that came from that time, let's just see what's been new with Connie.
Hey guys! Thank you for having me back.
Of course, it's always good to have you back.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. It's been pretty much the usual with me. Work, home, taking care of my bin. I made it through the holiday season. I hope everyone out there had a great holiday season. I've been getting ready for my annual Super Bowl party, gearing up for the spring. You know, it's my time to shine. I love my plants. And that's pretty much what's new in me.
Awesome. Well, now that we've been caught up to speed, we would just like to thank John for inviting us to be a part of his buddy read, as we had a lot of great times chatting with him, Hanny, and Amy about all of the twists and turns that this book presented.
Yes.
So if any of y'all are watching, we hope you enjoy this review. But without further ado, let's bundle up and head over to Bresden Bay and see what type of vengeful things are hiding under the water's tranquil surface.
Yeah.
Head Like a Hole by Andrew Van Wey is a gruesome murder mystery that is full of body horror.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like to match up what you read with a specific time of year, the meat of this story takes place the week going into Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Aside from that, this book opens up by introducing a skeezy podcaster who is hoping to gain a tell-all story from a soul survivor named Megan, who had survived 2 tragic events during her youth.
From here, the story rewinds to the autumn of 1996 and introduces a fisherman named Lewis who was secretly crabbing in Bresden Bay. And while his main focus is not to get caught, he is suddenly taken by surprise when he opens one of his traps and a severed head falls out. And while this isn't your typical human remains, because this particular head is still conscious and it's remaining food so that it can recover.
Eventually, we discover this severed head is the remains of a foreign exchange student named Oksana. And due to a party that went horribly wrong during her senior year of high school, she is now returned to exact her revenge. Which, among those that Oksana is targeting, Megan finds herself trapped in a scenario that brings to light things that she had long forgotten.
Okay, we have a really awesome surprise for you guys.
So, I wasn't expecting this, but Andrew Van Wey stumbled upon my TikTok and we were commenting back and forth to each other, and he has allowed me the opportunity to ask him a few questions about this book. So, without further ado, here are his answers. Question number 1. While it seems that Head Like a Hole was a love letter to body horror and I Know What You Did Last Summer, what were your inspirations for plot and theme? Andrew Van Wey said, I originally pitched it as The Ring Meets the Thing. I wanted it to evoke some of the feeling of horror and technology misfiring that The Ring had, while also maintaining the body-shifting mutations and nastiness that The Thing is so beloved for. Plus, there's a real fun sense of progression in the thing as we learn about this monster adapting and trying to outsmart people. At the same time, I knew that if it was going to be set in the 90s and tinged with nostalgia, I wanted to play on some of the tropes of the decade. Movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Faculty, and Jacob's Ladder are classics, and we look at From Dusk Till Dawn fondly now, but I remember how divisive that movie was, especially with Pulp Fiction putting Tarantino on the map. All these things were sort of cultural touchstones that I knew anyone who grew up in the 90s and any young character set in that decade would be aware of. Plus, I've always loved the trope of a group of friends with a shared ill deed that sent them on their separate ways. I wanted to explore what makes some friends forget something awful they did. Was it the guilt? Was it some sort of physical trauma? Was it something other? This story wouldn't work in 2023 with everyone interconnected and taking photos and uploading videos to the cloud. But in 1994 through 1996, there wasn't a cloud. There was just our memories, and memories can be altered. Question number 2. The scientific explanation behind Oksana was really impressive and detailed. How were you able to create a backstory this intricate while keeping it believable? Andrew Van Wey explained, I grew up in a medical family and I'm a big time science and medical anomaly geek. It fascinates me how our bodies work and how all the ways they can get gummed up. We think of ourselves as one single thing, and yet we have entire biomes living inside us that help us digest food. Change our gut biome, and suddenly things go sideways. An unbalanced gut can even create something called autobrewery syndrome that will get you drunk on carbohydrates. And our cells are constantly regenerating at different rates. We're a living ship of Theseus that's constantly being rebuilt, yet we act like we're the same organism from birth to death. This led me to the idea of Oksana, someone who, due to exposure to mass amounts of radiation, regrows way too fast and doesn't always regrow in the right way, or might need a bit of a nudge from time to time, much like a hermit crab swapping out shells. Question number 3. Since I grew up in the 90s, I have an instant love for almost anything 90s space. What made you decide the 90s was the right decade for this story? Andrew Van Wey responded, I wanted to write something nostalgic, but I didn't really remember the 80s. Plus, Stranger Things, Grady Hendrix, and all the synthwave music, there's been a real 80s vibe coming back over the past decade or so. But the 90s seemed different. It existed in this weird limbo between the fall of the Berlin Wall, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and 9/11. The internet was there, but it wasn't everywhere. You still had to boot your mom off the phone to dial into AOL. Yes, you could get a text message on your beeper, but you had to use a payphone to call back. After all the bubblegum pop music of the 80s, the 90s just felt like a decade of optimism with a soundtrack of anti-establishment. There was this weird sense that the hippies had sold out and become boomers, and were now trying to sell CDs of manufactured music, but the grunge kids weren't having any of it. Plus, it's just so much more fun to write a story where everyone doesn't have to access instant communication, Wikipedia, and video cameras. For that reason alone, I'd write every book in the 90s if I could. Question number 4. What made you decide to connect the story with Chernobyl? Andrew Van Wey responded, Chernobyl was such a weird event to process in the late 80s and early 80s. I was a kid, so it wasn't exactly front and center of my thoughts, but it trickled in, especially as the Soviet Union collapsed and Ukraine earned its liberation. There was just such weird fog surrounding it, so much myth in the early to mid 90s, especially about the Black Forest and how much radiation got into the soil. We didn't have shows like Chernobyl or TikTokers going to the exclusion zone to shoot footage. The internet was basically something academics used, or AOL. There was just this sense that something awful happened in Chernobyl, and we didn't quite know what. Little things leaked out in magazines and newspapers, like photos of the elephant's foot or the sarcophagus they used to seal part of it off. And it was like, holy shit, this was really a huge deal. But as Americans, we're so far away from it that fog still seemed to linger. And sometimes that fog of uncertainty is the best place for nightmares to grow. Question number 5. The ending to Head Like a Hole is very creepy and brilliant. Will there be a sequel in the future? Van Wey responded, thanks. In general, I don't plan on writing sequels off the bat, and Head Like a Hole was definitely planned as a one and done kind of story. That said, I won't deny that I've had a lot of wandering thoughts and curiosity about what happened in the years after Megan Oksana emerged from that fire and returned to that Philadelphia bar on Christmas Eve of '96. What were the rest of her art school years like? Is there still a part of Megan inside Oksana fighting to get out? Are they like two people struggling for control of one body? Are there others still tracking her down? I'm not currently writing anything, but I won't deny that thoughts are starting to emerge. Question number 6. Is there anything you would like to speak about that I didn't ask? Andrew Van Wey responded, I just want to thank everyone who has read Head Like a Hole and shared their thoughts. Horror is a very small genre that makes up a fraction of a percent of the overall book readership. Yet the readers are among some of the best I've interacted with. Furthermore, there are some tremendously good writers out there crafting exceptionally freaky stories in the independent horror landscape. While I and everyone in my generation probably grew up on King, Kuntz, and others in the heyday of the 80s and 90s horror, I encourage readers to give indie authors a chance. Some of the best indie horror I've found hasn't been coming out of big publishers and winding up on the shelves at Barnes & Noble, but instead from indie authors listening to readers and taking real creative risk. Find those authors, support them, and share the love of a good story. Horror is such a small niche that the indie authors respond to readers, and readers have a chance to help guide the future of horror. Well, now that we have that covered, it's time to move on to the spoiler segment, which, if you haven't read this book before, we're about to reveal some things that could ruin the experience for you. So if you would like to click away, just scroll down to the comments and you'll see that we have a pinned comment at the top with a timestamp in it. Once you click that timestamp, it will direct you away from the spoilers and bring you to the thoughts section. Now, you only have 17 seconds to do this. So, ready,
set, go!
Even when you
Talk to the headphones!
even when you
Talk to
interrupt
the
me,
head!
you cannot
Talk to the
say,
head!
you mother... Since everyone's had the opportunity to click away, we would like to talk about a few of our favorite moments. First up was when Lewis found Oksana's head.
Yeah.
Now, upon him finding these animated remains, his initial knee-jerk reaction is this is going to be his golden ticket to get him a guest spot on shows like Oprah and Ricky Lake. However, Oksana begins trying to communicate with him by blinking her good eye. And this is when he gets down on his knees to start clearing all of the snails that have collected in her mouth. And he's doing this maybe where she can talk to him and explain what the hell is going on, because this is not your typical day.
Right.
Well, as he's trying to help her out, this is when she bites him, which, in so many words, her biting him turns him into her Renfield. Y'all, this moment really took me by surprise because I
Mm.
had no clue that the author was going to paint this gritty imagery of how haggard her head appeared.
I know.
Like, it was just so nasty with the barnacles all over her, the starfish that was living in her empty eye socket, and the mouth full of smells. It was just. Also, looking back at this after having read it, I had no clue that a little head could cause this much damage. Take that in whatever direction you wish. Yeah. Yeah. But with perverse humor aside, like, I honestly did not think that a scenario this simple was going to spiral out into the insanity that we were presented.
I know, me either.
And in all honesty, by how this was described and how
Mhm.
everything played out,
Mm-hmm.
the scene is pretty damn iconic.
It really is. The first moment I wanted to talk about is the printer scene with Tom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, to set the scene, Tom and Daisy are at the media room where Tom is working on his gold paper. And while he's wrapping everything up, Daisy goes to the bathroom, where all of a sudden the computer starts acting up and the printer starts making a noise. Now he goes over to the printer to see what's going on, and he sees they got a fax. Now at first he can't quite make out what he's looking at, but as more faxes start rolling in, he sees that it is a picture of himself at that same exact moment. So Tom's freaking out. As would I, like for real.
Right.
And so
Right.
he runs out the room where he bumps into Desi, who also just had her own frightening experience in a bathroom at that same moment. Now, this scene really creeped me out. With the slow build tension of it, it really gave me the Ring or like the Grudge vibes.
Oh, totally.
Totally. And when all this is going on, the author really put me in Tom's shoes and had me questioning what in the world is being faxed here. And when the pictures start coming together, pure dread. Pure dread. No joke. And it took voyeurism to a whole nother creepy level. Whole other creepy level. And I tend to think that had this happened today, the victim would have just received an image of themselves via text message, which, to be honest, is kind of more realistic, because the stalker could have just been sending them images of themselves as they're taking them from a distance. But no, it took the realism of it completely, with it being sent by fax, because there's no logical reason, all of it for it to be happening. So it really makes it much more of a nightmare and scary because it is unnatural. The next scene I wanted to talk about is the basement scene with Megan. So leading up to this, Megan decides she's going to go to her old school to look for answers to see what's going on here. And while she's there, she runs into her old Spanish teacher. And after doing some small talk, she makes her way down to the basement to look for her old senior high school yearbook to see what she can find. And when she finds it, she realizes someone else had torn out the pages that she needed. And while she's down there, she starts to hear a noise and looks over, and something in the corner catches her eye. Now she goes over there to investigate, and she sees this pink, gross, slimy, head buggy looking thing creeping toward her. Freaking out. I would freak out. Now, as the closer it gets, she realizes that it's speaking to her. Again, she's freaking out. She's having a panic attack. She hightails it out of there. Again, this was just one of those things that really just creeped me out because it was really just unexpected, and just the gloomy setting that it was in. And also the description of this thing. It was just so unnatural. It had this skittery, crawly, creepy sensation to it that really just got under my skin. But I think it was more so just the thought of being alone in the basement with something so alien that sold me.
Oh, totally. Totally. It kind of had like that face hugger quality a
Yeah.
little bit. Our final favorite moment was when all of the puzzle pieces started to come together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is when Petro revealed that originally Oksana had been affected by the elephant's foot from the Chernobyl meltdown. And instead of her dying like any normal person,
right,
she somehow adapted. And this is also when we discovered that after he had spent years caring for her, Oksana's real name had actually been Zoriana. And this name change came about because she had developed this very unhealthy single white female obsession with a girl named Oksana.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up killing Oksana off, which allowed her to step in as a changeling. Then, once this happened, Oksana hightailed it over to America and bonded with Megan and all of her friends.
As the puzzle pieces start coming together, Megan remembered that she wanted to go to art school, and when her parents refused to pay, she admitted to her friends that she didn't need her family, she didn't need her parents. And Adam had told her that once they were gathered at Desi's summer house, Oksana had bragged that she had killed Megan's parents because she felt like she was doing Megan a solid.
But as Oksana was bragging, Megan pushed her and caused her to fall off of the deck. Then, when Adam and Tom went to go see what was up, they found Oksana in this weird state where she was between living and being dead. So Adam did what he thought was best, and he grabbed a shovel and beat her to death with it. Which, after he thought he did a job well done, he and Tom tossed her dead body in the bay.
After receiving this information, Megan remembers that she wanted to tell the truth and take all of the blame for what happened. But Adam and her friends decided they didn't want this all coming out. So they decided to douse her with alcohol and roll her off the cliff in her car to make it look like she died by drunk driving. But a passerby had came by, found her, and rescued her. And because of her accident, she suffered amnesia.
Y'all, even though we just gave the Reader's Digest version of everything, I really admired how we were hit with twist after twist after twist.
Yeah, we never really touched on all the body horror, the gory moments that happened in this scene and previous scenes, like when her head attached to June's body.
Oh, God, that moment. To be honest, this whole book felt like a huge wet dream for any fan of John Carpenter's The Thing or any story by Lovecraft for that matter.
Yeah, can we touch on that final twist in the current time? Because it is something that I suspected, but reading it was still a kick in the butt.
Oh, yeah, the zombie Stepfords. Yeah.
Yes.
And obviously for the viewer, you can probably tell we had a really difficult time narrowing down our favorite moments. We would like to take this opportunity to bitch. Hit it, Picky.
Okay. A vengeful radioactive zombie head wasn't on my bingo card, but since it popped up anyway, I'm ready to spill the tea. So check it. Oksana is a manipulator. She is a murderer. She is a liar. She is a cheater. And like the Energizer Bunny, she just keeps going and going and going. And yeah, she acts like they're her friends, but she's using those little pawn pieces on a chessboard. And she did Megan the dirtiest. She's over there acting like they're besties, like they're sisters. But she's sleeping with Adam behind her back. And she used that poor fool Lewis to get her out of the sea. He goes on a murder spree, and while she's spewing her little pink garbage everywhere. And I guess one good thing I can say is she's creative with her kills. And that lying, cheating fool Adam got what he deserved. And when she got her karma, baby, I cheered. Because with friends like her, who needs enemies?
I would like to take this opportunity to bitch about that crusty ass taint known as Adam. Now, it's already been established that this douchebag don't know how to keep his little inchworm in his pants. And while he was strutting his stuff around like he was hot shit, I can guarantee you he weren't no Freddie Prinze Jr.
I think you might be showing your age a little bit, Brownie.
Shut the hell up, Connie. Aside from this asswipe being a potential future guest on Maury's You Are the Baby Daddy reveal, he stooped so low, he almost got Judge Judy contestant status. Because, let me tell you, this mouth breather here, instead of him actually trying to help Megan, No, he conspired with his asswipe friends so they could kill her to keep her quiet. Like,
Mm-mm.
as a boyfriend, how bottom of the barrel do you have to be?
He sucked.
And I mean, I have met some tools in my time. I have dated some tools in my
Mm-hmm.
time. And this asshole here deserved to go down, just like when they decided to make that god awful TV series off of the movie Clueless.
Mm-hmm.
Head Like a Hole by Andrew Van Wey was an original splatterpunk novel that I feel really could have fit into the subcategory of bizarro fiction.
Yeah, and aside from some seedy characters who made us wonder what bad crap they did, we noticed that the book has some pretty solid themes as well.
Right? And among those, we have the subjects of the past coming back to haunt you. We have being careful of who you befriend. And we're even presented with the subject of wanting to gain fame off of another person's misery.
And we noticed the book has some pretty cool symbolism as well.
Character wise, we really felt like the cast was engaging and they made us constantly wonder exactly what crime they had committed and what drove them to commit that crime.
Yeah, and until the grand reveal, we were constantly questioning everybody's motives, and it was presented in such a way it made it hard to trust anyone.
As far as symbolism is concerned, the main focus of this book is having your past come back to haunt you.
Mm-hmm.
And out of all of the places where Oksana could have emerged, Lewis fishes her head out of the water. Which, because of this,
Mm-hmm.
we literally have the past resurfacing.
Right.
Also, water is a symbolism for life, birth, and even renewal.
Mm-hmm.
And similar to a baptism, we see where Oksana has emerged from the bay as this great villain, and she seems a lot more stronger now than she did before she went down.
Also, Haney pointed out how the painting of Judith slaying Holofernes is mentioned, where Judith is depicted of performing a beheading, which this artwork was inspired by the Old Testament, where it is held as a representation of the powerful woman in revenge.
Then we have the significance of the character names, such as Zoriana, which means dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And because of what happens, she does somewhat rein in a new dawn because of her abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And after she changes her name to Oksana, this name has some ancient roots that also mean dawn. But at the same time, this name means praising God.
Mm-hmm.
Which, because of what she does, we are faced with a scenario that is fairly cosmic. Theme wise, the primary focus of this work shows the past can always come back to haunt you no matter what.
Yeah, similar to how a ghost story serves as a reminder of the past, Oksana is here to prove that whatever crime you previously committed, eventually it's going to come back to haunt you.
Another subject we noticed was the drive to gain fame off of someone else's misery,
Mm-hmm.
which this was briefly mentioned when Lewis considered that finding Oksana could grant him the opportunity to become famous through talk shows.
And then another example, decades later, is a podcaster who's doing everything he can to gain Megan's uncut story so he can broadcast it, maintain his fame, or possibly get even more famous.
Also, we notice where this book really urged for you to be careful when it comes down to who you decide to let in as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And this is seen not only by how Zoriana and Oksana had a relationship, but it's mirrored in regards to Megan and her circle of friends.
Yeah, with everything that happened and how the teenage reacted to it, the book really stands as a cautionary tale that urges people to really have a better judge of character of who you decide to befriend. Head Like a Hole really didn't scare me, but a couple parts did kind of creep me out. I wasn't really grossed out either, but I will say that this book kept me on my toes.
Between all of us, John said that this book gave him nightmares, and there was once or twice where he had to sleep with the light on. Also, Hanny had mentioned that the fear factor of this really got to her. Personally, the book didn't scare me, but there were quite a few times where it was creepy, and the gross out moments were chef's kiss. So this was really a fun roller coaster between creepy and gory. Head Like a Hole by Andrew Van Wey took me by complete surprise, and this did not shy away from being a grotesque body horror book whatsoever, which I'm honestly not complaining, because while body horror freaks me out, I absolutely love reading body horror. Which, if you are the kind of person who's really squeamish, this might not be the book for you, because the author does not shy away from any of the gross bits. However, if you are looking for a book that is full of twists and turns while it remains original and gory, then I do highly recommend this novel.
I highly recommend it too. I really enjoyed it. It really kept me engaged and guessing the entire time. It really is just a great buddy read for you and your friends.
Well, as always, it was a pleasure having you back.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me back.
And next time we do a buddy read, it's going to be your pick.
Yeah.
So we know what we're going to read already, but we're going to leave that as a surprise for you.
Yeah.
So obviously you'll be back sooner than later.
Really soon, guys.
All
Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming back.
Bye, guys.
Now that we're at the end of this video, I would like to thank these amazing people for contributing to my Patreon account. As you can tell, some of the names listed here are creators, so be sure to check out their work. And if you would like to contribute to my Patreon account, I have a link available in the description section of this episode. So if you're able to contribute, that's awesome. If not, no sweat. I just hope you return to this channel so we can have a great time together. And if you would like to hit me up on social media, links to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are all available in the description section of this episode. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell, because I have more book reviews coming in the near future. So until we see each other again, I hope you have a great week and sweet nightmares.